My name is Donna Taylor. I'm 60 years old and I'm lying in a hospital bed at Mercy General, pretending to be dead. 3 days ago, my own son tried to poison my husband Kevin and me with digitalis, a heart medication that, in the right dose, stops your heart cold. But the worst part wasn't the poison in our anniversary wine. The worst was when I heard my husband whisper in the ambulance, his voice breaking. "Donna, I know why Brandon did this. I've known for 25 years. Those words hit me harder than any poison ever could. Right now, through my half-closed eyelids, I can see my son Brandon pacing outside the ICU window. His wife Sarah sits beside him, her hand on his shoulder, her face the picture of wifely concern. To anyone passing by, they look like a devastated couple waiting for news about their beloved in-laws. But I know the truth now. I know they're waiting for confirmation that Kevin and I are finally dead, so they can claim our $180,000 estate and pay off the debts that are slowly destroying them. The nurse, Jennifer, according to her name tag, adjusts my IV. She knows I'm awake. She's the only one who does, besides Kevin in the room next door. She leans close and whispers, "Mrs. Taylor, the detective is on his way. Just hold on a little longer. I want to cry. I want to scream. I want to grab my son by his shoulders and ask him how he could do this to us. But instead I lie perfectly still, my heart monitor beeping its steady rhythm. And I remember when Brandon was 5 years old and fell off his bicycle, how he ran to me crying, how I held him and kissed his scraped knee and told him everything would be okay. I remember teaching him to read, watching him graduate high school, walking him down the aisle when he married Sarah. I remember thinking on that sunny June day 8 years ago that I was the luckiest mother in the world. How did that little boy, my baby, turn into the man who just tried to kill me? Kevin would say I should have seen the signs. But mothers don't want to see the monster in their child's eyes. We see what we want to see. The good, the potential, the redemption that's always just around the corner. But 25 years of blindness ends today. Today, I see everything. Kevin and I met 42 years ago at a community dance in our small town outside of Pittsburgh. He was a carpenter's apprentice with sawdust in his hair and the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. I was a first-year teacher at Riverside Elementary, nervous about everything, including talking to handsome men at dances. He asked me to dance to Unchained Melody. I said yes. 6 months later, we were married in the little church on Maple Street, with my sister Rebecca as my maid of honor, and Kevin's best friend Tom as his best man. Our life together was simple but beautiful. Kevin opened his own carpentry shop in town, creating custom furniture that people came from 3 counties over to buy. I taught 2nd grade, coming home every afternoon with stories about my students and construction paper artwork that we'd hang on the refrigerator. We bought a 3-bedroom house on Elm Avenue, white with blue shutters, a front porch perfect for watching summer storms, and a backyard big enough for the children we planned to have. Michael came first, 2 years after we married. He had Kevin's dark hair and my green eyes, and from the moment he could walk, he followed his father everywhere. By the time he was 10, he could handle a saw better than most adults. He was gentle, patient, always helping without being asked. When old Mrs. Henderson down the street needed her fence repaired, Michael spent his entire Saturday fixing it, refusing payment except for a glass of her famous lemonade. Brandon arrived 5 years later. I'll never forget holding him in the hospital, looking down at his tiny face, feeling that overwhelming rush of love that only mothers know. Kevin kissed my forehead and whispered, "Our family is complete." If I had known then what I know now, I would have held Brandon tighter. Or maybe I would have looked closer at the way he watched Michael, even as a baby. That intense stare, like he was studying something he couldn't quite understand. The boys were different from the start. Michael was sunshine, warm, open, giving. Brandon was complicated, quiet, observant. He'd sit in the corner during family gatherings, watching everyone with those dark, unreadable eyes. When I'd ask what he was thinking, he'd just smile and say, "Nothing, Mom." But it wasn't nothing. I see that now. Our Sunday dinners were a tradition. After church, the whole family would gather around the oak dining table Kevin had carved by hand. His masterpiece, he called it. Michael would tell us about his plans to study engineering at Penn State, his face animated, his hands gesturing wildly as he described bridges he wanted to build. Brandon would sit quietly, pushing food around his plate, barely speaking unless directly asked a question. "Brandon, honey, how was your week?" I'd ask. "Fine," he'd say. "Did anything interesting happen at school?" "Not really." Kevin would catch my eye across the table, a slight furrow in his brow. We'd have the same conversation later, in bed, in whispers so the boys wouldn't hear. "He's just shy," I'd say. "He'll come out of his shell." "Maybe," Kevin would reply, but even then I could hear the doubt in his voice. The thing is, Brandon wasn't shy. He had friends, he got decent grades, he played soccer and helped me in the garden and seemed, from the outside, like a perfectly normal kid. But there was something missing, some warmth, some connection that Michael had naturally and Brandon had to work to fake. I didn't want to see it. What mother wants to believe her child is fundamentally different, fundamentally off? So I told myself stories. He's just quieter than Michael. He's more introspective. He shows love differently. All the lies we tell ourselves to avoid the truth. By the time Brandon was 15 and Michael was 20, the tension between them was impossible to ignore. They'd argue about stupid things, whose turn it was to take out the trash, who ate the last of the cereal, who left the garage door open. But underneath the petty fights, there was something darker, something that felt like genuine hatred. I'd hear them in the hallway late at night, their voices low and intense. "You think you're so perfect," Brandon would hiss. "Everyone loves Michael. Michael can do no wrong." "That's not true," Michael would reply, his voice tired. "Mom and Dad love you just as much." "Liar. You get everything. You always have." "Brandon, that's not—" "Just leave me alone." When I'd appear in the hallway, they'd both go silent, smiling at me with false brightness. "Everything okay, boys?" "Fine, Mom," they'd say in unison. But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. October 15th, 25 years ago, the night my world split into before and after. Michael didn't come home for dinner. He was 20 years old, responsible, always called if he was going to be late. By 8 o'clock, I was pacing the kitchen, calling his friends, getting nothing but shrugs, and "I haven't seen him since this afternoon." Kevin tried to calm me down. "He's probably just lost track of time. You know how he gets when he's working on a project." But I knew, the way mothers know, something was wrong. At 9 o'clock, Kevin went out to look for him. Brandon stayed in his room, supposedly studying for a test. I knocked on his door around 10. "Honey, have you heard from Michael?" "No." He didn't even look up from his textbook. "Are you sure? Did he say anything to you this afternoon about where he might be going?" "I don't keep track of what Michael does, Mom." His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. I closed the door slowly, my hands shaking. Kevin came home at midnight, his face pale, his eyes red. Behind him were Sheriff Williams and Deputy Foster. I knew before they said a word. "Mrs. Taylor," Sheriff Williams said gently, taking off his hat. "We found Michael." The world tilted. Kevin caught me before I fell. "Where?" I whispered. "At the bottom of Miller's Gorge. It looks like he fell. We think it was an accident, Mrs. Taylor. He must have been walking the trail in the dark, lost his footing. An accident. That's what they said. That's what I believed for 25 years. Michael's funeral was held on a gray Tuesday that matched my soul. I wore the same black dress I'd worn to my mother's funeral 5 years earlier, and I cried until I thought I'd run out of tears completely. Kevin stood beside me, solid as stone, holding me up when my legs gave out. But it was Brandon I remember most from that day. He didn't cry, not once. He stood by the casket in his ill-fitting suit, his face blank, his eyes dry. When people came to offer condolences, he'd nod politely and say, "Thank you for coming," like he was accepting thanks for a party he'd thrown, not mourning his only brother. I told myself he was in shock. that grief affects everyone differently, that he'd break down later, in private, when he felt safe. He never did. After Michael's death, something in Brandon changed. He became better, more attentive. He started helping Kevin in the workshop without being asked. He'd bring me tea when I was grading papers. He'd ask about my day and actually listen to the answer. It was like he was trying to fill the space Michael had left behind. "See?" I told Kevin one night, 6 months after the funeral. "He's coming out of his shell. Maybe Michael's death made him realize how precious family is." Kevin didn't answer. He just stared at the ceiling, his jaw tight. I should have asked what he was thinking. I should have pushed, but I was so desperate for something good to come from Michael's death that I didn't want to hear anything that might shatter that fragile hope. The years passed. The wound never fully healed. It doesn't when you lose a child. But we learned to live with it. Brandon graduated high school, went to community college for 2 years, then started working with Kevin in the carpentry shop. He was good at it, maybe even better than Michael had been, with a precision and patience that created beautiful work. At 27, he met Sarah at a coffee shop in the next town over. She was pretty, with blonde hair and a sweet smile, working as a pharmacy technician. She seemed kind. She called me Mom from the first time Brandon brought her to dinner. She helped me clear the table and complimented the house and said all the right things. They got married a year later. We danced at their wedding. I cried happy tears and told Brandon how proud I was of him, how I knew Michael was looking down from heaven and smiling. Brandon hugged me tight and whispered, "Thanks, Mom. I'll take care of you and Dad always. I promise." A promise he intended to keep by killing us for the inheritance. Emma was born 2 years after the wedding, Lucas 2 years after that. Beautiful, innocent grandchildren who filled our house with laughter again. I'd babysit every Wednesday while Brandon and Sarah worked, baking cookies with Emma and building block towers with Lucas. Those were happy years, simple years, or so I thought. The first real warning sign came 6 months ago, on a Saturday afternoon in late spring. Brandon stopped by the house without calling first, which wasn't unusual. But Sarah wasn't with him, and the kids weren't in the car. He had a folder of papers in his hand and that smile, the one I now recognize as his manipulation smile. "Hey, Mom? Dad around?" "He's in the workshop. Is everything okay?" "Everything's great. Just wanted to talk to you guys about something important." Kevin came in wiping sawdust from his hands. We sat at the oak table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of family meals, and Brandon spread out the papers. "So you guys are both 60 and 65 now," he began, "and I was thinking, it's really important to have your affairs in order. You know, just in case." "Just in case what?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Just in case anything happens. Nobody likes to think about it, but, well, you need a will. You need to make sure everything is set up properly." Kevin and I had a will, of course, created 20 years ago when the boys were young, but we'd never updated it after Michael died. I already talked to David Morrison. He's a lawyer in town, does estate planning. He said he could fit you in this week if you want. The way he said it, so casual, so helpful, should have set off alarms. But I was touched. My son was looking out for us, thinking about our future, being responsible. "That's very thoughtful, honey," I said. Over the next week, Brandon's helpfulness intensified. He'd stop by every other day with new information about estate planning, about the value of our house, which had appreciated significantly since we bought it, about our savings accounts and life insurance policies. "You've done really well for yourselves," he said one evening, looking at the papers David Morrison had drawn up. "Between the house, Dad's workshop equipment, and your savings, you're looking at about $180,000 in assets." The way he said it, almost hungry, made my skin crawl. But I pushed the feeling down. "Mom, Dad, I have a suggestion," Brandon continued. "Why don't you name Sarah and me as your primary beneficiaries? We'll make sure everything gets distributed to Emma and Lucas eventually, but this way, if anything happens to both of you, there won't be any legal complications." "What about leaving it directly to the kids?" Kevin asked, his voice careful. "They're too young. It would all get tied up in trusts and court proceedings. This is cleaner." and you know Sarah and I will do right by them." Something in his tone made me look at Kevin. He was staring at Brandon with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Let us think about it," Kevin said. After Brandon left, I turned to my husband. "That was strange, wasn't it?" Kevin didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, looking out at the workshop where he and Michael used to spend hours together. "Donna," he said quietly, then caught himself. "Donna, there are things about Michael's death I never told you." My blood went cold. "What things?" But before he could answer, the phone rang. It was Rebecca calling about our niece's baby shower. By the time I hung up, Kevin had retreated into himself again, the moment lost. Over the following weeks, Brandon's visits became more frequent and more pointed. He started suggesting we sell the house. "It's too big for two people," he'd say. "What if one of you falls down the stairs? What if something happens and you can't maintain it? Sarah and I could help you find a nice apartment in town." Sarah would nod enthusiastically. "We've been looking at some lovely senior living communities. They're not nursing homes or anything, just smaller, more manageable spaces. You'd have so much less to worry about." I loved our house. Every corner held a memory. The kitchen where I'd baked birthday cakes for the boys. The living room where we'd opened Christmas presents. The backyard where Michael had built a treehouse that was still standing, now used by Emma and Lucas. "I'm not ready to leave," I said firmly. Brandon's face hardened for just a second, a flash of something cold and angry before the smile returned. "Of course, Mom, just think about it." But the pressure continued. Brandon suggested we give him power of attorney, just as a precaution. He brought up long-term care insurance and asked detailed questions about our bank accounts. Sarah started making comments about how expensive it was to maintain an old house, how the property taxes must be killing us, how we could invest our money so much better if we liquidated our assets. I called Rebecca one afternoon, needing to talk to someone outside the situation. "Becca, does it seem weird to you that Brandon is suddenly so interested in our finances?" My sister was quiet for a moment. "Donna, has his business been doing okay?" "As far as I know." "Why?" "I ran into Tom Wilkins at the grocery store last week. You remember Kevin's old friend? He mentioned that Brandon owes him money for some lumber that was supposed to be paid for months ago." My heart sank. "How much?" "He didn't say. But Donna, be careful. I love Brandon, but people do desperate things when they're in financial trouble." That night I confronted Brandon directly. He came over for dinner, just him, without Sarah or the kids. "Son," I said as we sat in the living room afterward, "why is it so important for you to control our financial affairs? Your father and I are still perfectly capable of managing our own money." His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, anger, calculation, before settling on hurt. "Mom, I'm just trying to help. I'm trying to be responsible, to make sure you guys are taken care of." "But we are taken care of. We don't need—" "You don't trust me." His voice was flat. "After everything, you don't trust your own son." "That's not what I'm saying." He stood up abruptly. "I've been trying to be a good son. I've been trying to make up for—" He stopped, his jaw working. "Forget it. I'll stop bothering you about it." He left without saying goodbye. I sat there in the dark, my heart pounding, replaying his words, trying to make up for... Make up for what? When Kevin came in from the workshop an hour later, I was still sitting in the same spot. "Kevin," I said, "you need to tell me what you know about Michael's death. Right now. No more secrets." He looked at me for a long moment, his face haggard in the lamplight. Then he sat down heavily in his chair, the same chair he'd sat in for 40 years, and began to speak. "The night Michael died," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "Brandon wasn't in his room studying. I saw him leave the house around 8 o'clock. Something about the way he moved, tense, furtive, made me follow him. I couldn't breathe. I followed him to Miller's Gorge. And Donna, I saw them arguing. I heard them screaming at each other. About money. About inheritance. About things that should never matter more than family." "What are you saying?" I whispered, even though I already knew. Kevin looked at me, tears streaming down his weathered face. I'm saying Brandon killed Michael, and I've known it for 25 years. The silence in our living room felt like it could crush me. Kevin sat in his chair, his hands trembling, staring at them as if they belonged to someone else. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The words he'd just said echoed in my mind on an endless loop. Brandon killed Michael, and I've known it for 25 years. Tell me everything, I finally whispered. Every single detail. No more protecting me from the truth. Kevin took a shuddering breath. 3 days before he died, Michael came to me in the workshop. He was upset, more upset than I'd ever seen him. He had bank statements in his hand, photocopies he'd made at the library. Bank statements? Our bank statements, Donna. He'd been checking our accounts, said he'd noticed some irregularities in the balances. Small amounts at first, $50 here, $100 there, but over 6 months it added up to almost $15,000. My hand flew to my mouth. 15,000? Michael had proof. Forged checks with my signature. Withdrawals Brandon had made using an ATM card he'd somehow gotten access to. Michael had been investigating for weeks, trying to give Brandon a chance to come clean, but Brandon never did. I felt sick. So Michael confronted him. He told me he was going to. That same night. I tried to talk him out of it, told him to wait, that we'd handle it together as a family. But Michael was so angry, Donna. He said Brandon had stolen from us, betrayed our trust, and needed to face consequences. Kevin stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. The streetlight outside cast his shadow long across the floor. I followed him. God help me, I knew something terrible was going to happen, and I followed him anyway, stayed back like a coward, hoping it would just resolve itself. Where did they go? Miller's Gorge. That trail Michael loved, the one he'd hike when he needed to think. Brandon must have agreed to meet him there. When I got close enough, I could hear them shouting. Kevin's voice broke. I'd never heard my husband cry like this. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook his entire body. What were they saying? I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know. Brandon was screaming that Michael had everything, that Mom and Dad loved him more, that he was the golden child who could do no wrong, that he'd inherit the business and the house and everything. Michael tried to calm him down, said that wasn't true, that we loved them both equally. But Brandon wouldn't listen. Kevin turned to face me, his face wet with tears. Michael told him that stealing was unforgivable, that he had to return the money and confess to us, or Michael would tell us himself. That's when Brandon... He couldn't finish. When Brandon what? I demanded, my voice harder than I intended. He pushed him, Donna. I saw it. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a struggle where Michael lost his balance. Brandon put both hands on Michael's chest and shoved him backwards, over the edge. Michael's arms were flailing, trying to grab onto something, anything. The sound he made... Kevin collapsed back into his chair, his face in his hands. I ran to the edge. Michael was at the bottom, his body at an angle no living person could achieve. And Brandon was standing there, staring down, breathing hard. When he heard me coming, he turned, and the look on his face... For a second it was triumph. Then it shifted to shock, then terror. What did you do? I was crying now, too. For Michael, for Kevin, for all of us. I climbed down. Michael was already gone. His neck was broken. Brandon followed me down, and when I looked at him, really looked at him, he started crying, saying it was an accident, that he didn't mean to, that Michael had tried to hit him and he'd just pushed him away in self-defense. But you saw it. You knew he was lying. Yes. Kevin's voice was hollow. But he was my son, Donna. My only living son, standing there begging me not to destroy his life. Saying he'd make it right, he'd pay back every penny, he'd never do anything like this again. And I believed him because I needed to believe him. Because the alternative was admitting that our son was a murderer and that I'd have to turn him in. The betrayal hit me in waves. Not just Brandon's betrayal, Kevin's too. 25 years of living a lie. 25 years of looking at Brandon across the dinner table, watching him play with his children, listening to him call me Mom, all while knowing what he'd done. "How could you?" I asked. "How could you keep this from me?" At first I told myself it was to protect you, that you'd already lost one son. You didn't need to lose the other. But as time went on, it became about protecting myself. Every day that passed made me more complicit. If I'd spoken up after a week, maybe I could have claimed I was in shock. After a month, I was an accessory. After a year, 5 years, 25 years, I was as guilty as Brandon. Did he pay the money back? Kevin's bitter laugh answered the question before his words did. Not a penny. In fact, he kept stealing. Small amounts, carefully, spread out over years so I wouldn't notice immediately. I pretended I didn't see. I pretended the bank errors were just errors. I became an expert at lying to myself. I stood up, pacing the room, trying to process everything. That's why you didn't want to update the will. That's why you looked so uncomfortable when Brandon suggested becoming our primary beneficiary. I started investigating his finances 3 weeks ago, Kevin said. Discreetly. I have a friend who works at the county clerk's office. Brandon's carpentry business is in serious trouble, Donna. He owes almost $95,000 to banks and suppliers. But that's not the worst part. What could be worse? He's borrowed money from people who don't go through legal channels when they want to be repaid. The kind of people who break bones first and ask questions later. He has 2 months to come up with the money. Or... Kevin didn't finish the sentence. Suddenly, everything clicked into place with horrifying clarity. We're worth $180,000, I said slowly. If we die, he gets everything. He can pay off his debts, start over. Yes. He killed Michael for $15,000. He'll kill us for $180,000. Yes. We stared at each other across the living room, the weight of our situation crushing us. Our own son, the baby I'd nursed, the child I'd raised, the man I'd loved unconditionally, was planning to murder us. We have to go to the police, I said. With what evidence? I'm an accessory to covering up Michael's murder. I'll go to prison too. And without proof of Brandon's current financial situation or his intent to harm us, what can they do? We can't prove he's planning anything. So what do? Just wait for him to kill us? Kevin reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small device, a digital voice recorder, the kind people use for lectures or interviews. We get proof. We make him confess. I've been recording every conversation we've had with Brandon for the past 2 weeks, but he's been too careful. We need him to slip up, to say something incriminating about his plans. How? Kevin's expression was grim. We give him the perfect opportunity. The next morning I called Brandon. My hands shook as I dialed, but I kept my voice steady. Honey, your dad and I have been talking, and you're right. We should update our will and make you the primary beneficiary. Can you set up an appointment with David Morrison? The pause on the other end of the line was telling. Then Brandon's voice, warm and relieved. Really, Mom? That's great. I'm so glad you're being smart about this. Smart about this. As if planning our estate was the same as planning our funeral. There's something else, I continued, following the script Kevin and I had rehearsed. Our 40th wedding anniversary is next weekend. We'd love to have a quiet celebration with you and Sarah. Maybe dinner at your place? Just the 4 of us? That sounds perfect, Brandon said. I could hear the smile in his voice. Sarah will be so happy. She's been wanting to do something special for you guys. After I hung up, Kevin and I sat at the kitchen table, our coffee growing cold between us. Can we really do this? I asked. Sit across from him, eat dinner, pretend everything is normal, knowing what we know? We have to. It's the only way to protect ourselves and to get justice for Michael. Over the next week, Brandon and Sarah's behavior shifted. They became even more attentive, calling every day, dropping by with small gifts. Flowers for me, a new set of chisels for Kevin's workshop. Sarah baked my favorite lemon cake. Brandon fixed the loose railing on our porch without being asked. To anyone else, they would have looked like the perfect son and daughter-in-law, caring for their aging parents. But I saw it differently now. I saw them laying the groundwork, establishing their role as devoted family members, so that when we died, when they killed us, no one would suspect. On Wednesday, Sarah called. "Donna, I wanted to check if you or Kevin have any food allergies we should know about for Saturday's dinner." "No allergies, dear. We can eat anything." "Perfect. I'm planning something really special. Oh, and I thought we could send Emma and Lucas to spend the night at my sister's house. This should be an adults-only evening. Time for just the four of us." My blood ran cold. They wanted the children away. No witnesses. "That sounds lovely," I managed to say. After I hung up, I immediately called Rebecca. "Becca, I need you to do something for me. Saturday night, if you don't hear from me by midnight, I need you to go to our house. There's an envelope in the safe. The combination is 1287, Michael's birthday. Inside is a letter explaining everything. Take it straight to the police." "Donna, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I can't explain right now. Just promise me you'll do it." "I promise, but I love you, Becca. You've been the best sister anyone could ask for." I hung up before she could respond, before I could break down completely. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, sunny, warm, the kind of day that feels like a blessing. I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to wear to what might be my last meal. Finally, I chose the blue dress Kevin had always liked, the one I'd worn on our actual anniversary 10 years ago. Kevin came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. In the mirror, we looked like what we were, two people in their 60s who'd spent a lifetime together, who'd survived joy and tragedy and were about to face their greatest test. "I love you," he said. "Whatever happens tonight, I need you to know that these 40 years with you have been the best of my life." "Don't say it like that. Don't say it like it's goodbye." "Donna, we're going to survive this. We're going to get our confession, go to the police, and we're going to survive this." But even as I said it, I wondered if I believed it. We arrived at Brandon and Sarah's house at 7. It was a modest 2-story they'd bought 5 years ago, in a neighborhood of similar houses with manicured lawns and 2-car garages. Emma's bike lay in the driveway, forgotten in the rush to get the kids to their aunt's house. Sarah answered the door in a green dress that matched her eyes, her blonde hair perfectly styled. Come in, we're so excited for tonight." The house smelled amazing. Roasted chicken, garlic, fresh bread. Classical music played softly from speakers I couldn't see. The dining room table was set with their best china, candles flickering in crystal holders. It was beautiful, thoughtful, perfect. It was a stage set for murder. Brandon emerged from the kitchen carrying a bottle of wine. "Mom, Dad, happy anniversary!" He hugged us both, and I had to force myself not to recoil. This was the man who'd killed my firstborn son. This was the man who was about to try to kill me. "I opened a special bottle for tonight," Brandon said, showing us the label. "It's from the year you got married. Been saving it for a special occasion." Kevin's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. The recorder in his watch was already activated, capturing everything. Dinner was delicious. Sarah had outdone herself. We made small talk about the weather, about Emma's upcoming ballet recital, about the new restaurant opening downtown. On the surface, it was a perfect family evening, but underneath, I could feel the tension like a wire pulled taut, ready to snap. After the main course, Sarah brought out dessert, my favorite tiramisu, and Brandon poured more wine from a different bottle. That's when I noticed it. The way Sarah poured from 2 bottles. 2 glasses from one bottle for her and Brandon. 2 glasses from another bottle for Kevin and me. My heart started racing. Kevin noticed too. I could tell from the way his jaw tightened. Brandon raised his glass. "To 40 years of marriage, to family, to health and long life." The irony of those words, health and long life, from the mouth of our would-be murderer. Kevin and I lifted our glasses. I let the wine touch my lips, but didn't swallow. When Brandon and Sarah weren't looking, I tipped my glass slightly, letting the wine spill into the napkin on my lap. Kevin did the same, pouring his into the potted plant beside his chair. Mom, you're not drinking, Sarah observed, her eyes sharp. Oh, I am, dear. Just slowly. At my age, wine goes right to my head. We made it through dessert. Then Brandon suggested we move to the living room for coffee. Actually, Sarah said, standing up and swaying slightly, I don't feel so well. Too much wine, I think. Donna, why don't you help me in the kitchen for a moment? I followed her, every nerve in my body on high alert. In the kitchen, she turned to face me, and for just a second the mask slipped. Her sweet smile turned cold. You know, don't you? She said softly. Know what? Don't play games, Donna. I saw you dump your wine. You and Kevin both. My mouth went dry. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Somehow you figured it out. She stepped closer and I backed against the counter. It doesn't matter. There are other ways. Sarah. She picked up a knife from the counter, a large chef's knife she'd used to cut the chicken, and for a terrible moment I thought she was going to stab me right there. Instead, she smiled. Brandon, she called. Can you come help me with something? Brandon appeared in the doorway. The look that passed between them told me everything I needed to know. They'd planned for this contingency. If the poison didn't work, they had a backup plan. There's been a change of plans, Sarah said, still holding the knife. Your parents are smarter than we thought. Brandon's face crumpled. Sarah, maybe we should what? Give up? Let those loan sharks kill you? Let our children grow up poor because you're too weak to do what needs to be done? I killed my brother, Brandon shouted suddenly, the words erupting from him like poison. I've lived with that for 25 years. I can't kill my parents, too. Kevin appeared in the doorway behind Brandon, his phone in his hand, recording. But you were going to, Kevin said quietly. You were going to poison us tonight, and when that didn't work, you were going to... What? Stab us? Make it look like a robbery? Sarah's face twisted with rage. She lunged forward with the knife. What happened next occurred in slow motion and too fast all at once. Kevin pushed Brandon aside and grabbed Sarah's wrist. The knife clattered to the floor. I screamed. Brandon stood frozen, tears streaming down his face. And then the front door burst open. Police, everyone freeze! Detective Robert Hayes and 3 officers stormed into the kitchen, guns drawn. Kevin had texted him our location 30 minutes ago when we'd first arrived. The recorder in his watch had captured everything. The different wine bottles, Sarah's confession, Brandon's admission about killing Michael. Sarah fought as they cuffed her, screaming obscenities. Brandon simply collapsed to the floor, sobbing. I'm sorry, he kept saying. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But sorry doesn't bring back the dead. And sorry doesn't erase 25 years of lies. As the police led them away, I stood in that kitchen, the kitchen where Sarah had prepared a meal designed to kill us, and I finally broke down. Kevin held me as I cried for Michael, for the son we'd lost twice, and for the family we'd never really had. 2 hours later, Detective Hayes led Kevin and me to a small conference room at the police station, while Brandon and Sarah were processed in separate holding cells. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Even wrapped in the blanket an officer had given me, I felt cold down to my bones. Mrs. Taylor, Detective Hayes said gently, I need you to tell me everything. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told him about Michael's death 25 years ago, about Kevin's terrible secret, about the missing money, Brandon's debts, the pressure to change our will, about the 2 wine bottles at dinner, and Sarah's cold eyes when she realized we knew. Kevin sat beside me, his voice breaking as he confessed his role in covering up Michael's murder. I know I'm guilty too, he said. I should have gone to the police that night. I should have told the truth. I'm prepared to face the consequences. Detective Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised me. Mr. Taylor, I understand why you made the choice you did. I don't agree with it, and yes, there will be legal consequences. But he paused, choosing his words carefully. But you ultimately did the right thing. You protected yourselves, you got evidence, and you stopped 2 people who were about to commit murder. That counts for something. What happens now? I asked. Now we build a case. The recording from your watch is damning. We have Sarah admitting to planning the poisoning, and we have Brandon's confession about killing Michael. We'll search their house for the digitalis and any other evidence. We'll interview their neighbors, their friends, pull their financial records. By the time this goes to trial, we'll have an airtight case. And the children? My voice cracked. Emma and Lucas. Where are they? They're still at Sarah's sister's house. Child Protective Services has been notified. They'll need temporary placement until this is sorted out. We want them, Kevin said immediately. We want custody. Detective Hayes nodded. I'll make a note of that. Given the circumstances, you'll likely be given priority as next of kin, but there will be a process, evaluations, home visits. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Emma's bright smile, about Lucas's endless questions about how things worked. I thought about raising them in the house where their father grew up, teaching them about the uncle they never met, giving them a chance at a normal life, away from the toxicity of their parents. Yes, I said. We're prepared. Over the next 48 hours, the full scope of Brandon and Sarah's plan came to light, and with it, the most shocking revelation of all. Detective Hayes came to our house on Monday morning with a folder full of documents. Kevin and I sat at our oak table, the same table where our family had once gathered for countless Sunday dinners, and listened as he laid out what they'd found. We searched Brandon and Sarah's house, he began. We found the digitalis hidden in Sarah's jewelry box. 50 pills, stolen from the pharmacy where she works. Enough to kill both of you several times over. My stomach turned. She stole them from work? She's been taking them for 6 months, a few at a time, so no one would notice. But that's not all. He opened the folder and pulled out a notebook. Sarah's handwriting filled every page. We found this hidden in her closet. It's a murder manual. Kevin took the notebook with trembling hands. I looked over his shoulder, reading Sarah's neat, methodical notes. Digitalis toxicity mimics natural heart failure in elderly patients. If dissolved in wine, taste is mostly masked. Lethal dose, 20 to 30 milligauss for an average adult, 40 milligauss to ensure no survival. K&D's anniversary dinner is seen as perfect opportunity. Kids at my sister's equals no witnesses. Brandon must stay calm, stick to the script. Grief-stricken son performance crucial for afterward. After death, wait 15 min before calling 911. Long enough to ensure death, not so long it seems suspicious. Brandon handles call, more believable coming from son. I handle neighbors afterward, play devastated daughter-in-law. Page after page of cold, calculated planning. Times, doses, contingency plans. She'd even drawn a timeline of the evening, marking when we'd arrive, when we'd eat, when the poison would take effect, when we'd die. There's more, Detective Hayes said quietly. We interviewed Sarah's sister, the one who was watching Emma and Lucas that night. She said Sarah had asked her to keep the kids for the entire weekend, not just Saturday night. Said she wanted to give Brandon time to grieve privately after his parents' death. She was planning it before we even accepted the dinner invitation, I whispered. Yes, and here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out another document, bank records. We pulled Sarah's financial history. 3 years ago, she took out a life insurance policy on Brandon. $500,000, with her as the sole beneficiary. Kevin looked up sharply. Why would she? And then it hit us both at the same time. She was planning to kill him too, Kevin said. Detective Hayes nodded grimly. We think so. Our theory is that she planned to use your inheritance to pay off Brandon's debts, buy herself some time. Then, within a year or two, she'd arrange an accident for Brandon. Maybe suicide, given his guilt over your deaths. She'd collect the insurance money, raise the kids alone on over $600,000 total, and no one would be the wiser. Twist 3. Sarah hadn't just planned to kill us. She'd planned to kill Brandon too, eventually. He was just another pawn in her game. I felt sick. Did Brandon know about the insurance policy? We don't think so. When we confronted Sarah with all this evidence, she tried to claim it was Brandon's idea. that he'd forced her to help him. But the notebook is in her handwriting. The digitalist theft happened at her workplace. And when we interviewed her coworkers, they painted a very different picture of Sarah than the sweet, caring woman we thought we knew. He pulled out more notes, interview transcripts. Sarah was always talking about money, how she deserved better than Brandon's struggling business could provide, how she'd married down and regretted it. Coworker number 1, she asked me once how much digitalis it would take to kill someone. Said she was just curious, watching a crime show. I thought it was weird but didn't report it. I should have. Coworker number 2, Sarah told me she was going to be rich someday, that she had a plan. I thought she meant she was going to get a better job or win the lottery. Now I realize what she really meant. Coworker number 3, Brandon is cooperating fully with us, Detective Hayes continued. He's confessed to everything, Michael's murder, the financial manipulation, the plan to poison you. He says Sarah convinced him it was the only way to save his family, to protect Emma and Lucas from the consequences of his debts. He's devastated to learn she was planning to kill him too. Can we see him? I asked, surprising myself. Kevin turned to me. Donna, are you sure? I need to. I need to hear it from him. I need to understand how my son became this. The interrogation room was small and sterile, all concrete blocks and fluorescent lighting. Brandon sat at a metal table, his hands cuffed in front of him, his face blotchy from crying. When Kevin and I walked in, he looked up, and the expression on his face broke my heart all over again. Mom, he whispered. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat down across from him. Kevin stood behind me, his hand on my shoulder. Tell me why, I said. My voice was steady, controlled. I'd cried all my tears. Now I just needed answers. Tell me why you killed your brother. Brandon's face crumpled. I was jealous. God, that sounds so stupid now, but I was so jealous of him. He was smarter, funnier, better at everything. Everyone loved Michael. And I was just there. The spare son. The backup. That's not true. We loved you both equally. Maybe you did, Mom, but I never felt it. I always felt like I was competing for scraps of attention while Michael got the whole meal. He wiped his eyes with his cuffed hands. When I found out he'd discovered the money I'd stolen, I panicked. I thought if you knew what I'd done, you'd finally see me as the failure I really was. You'd love me even less. So you killed him. I didn't plan to. I swear, Mom, I didn't go to that gorge planning to kill him. I just wanted to talk to him, to explain, to make him understand. But he was so righteous, so sure that I had to confess and face consequences. And I just snapped. I pushed him. And when he fell, when I saw his body at the bottom, Brandon's voice dropped to a whisper. I felt relieved. Relieved that he was gone, that I wouldn't have to live in his shadow anymore. What kind of monster feels relieved when their brother dies? Kevin spoke for the first time. Why didn't you tell me the truth that night? Why did you let me believe it was an accident? Because you wanted to believe it, Dad. I saw it in your eyes. You wanted to believe your son wasn't a murderer. And I let you believe it because it was easier. For both of us. And us? I asked. How did you convince yourself it was okay to kill us? Brandon's face twisted in anguish. I didn't. I never wanted to hurt you. But Sarah made it sound so logical. We were drowning in debt. Those men who loaned me money, they were going to kill me, Mom. They told me I had 8 weeks to pay them back, or they'd make an example of me. They knew about Emma and Lucas. They threatened my kids. So you decided to threaten us instead. Sarah said you were old, that you'd had good lives, that this way Emma and Lucas would have a future. She made it sound like a mercy, like we'd be putting you out of the misery of aging and sickness and eventual death anyway. She's very good at making terrible things sound reasonable. Did you know about the insurance policy on your life? Brandon's head snapped up. What insurance policy? Kevin slid the document across the table. Brandon read it, his face going pale, then green. She was going to kill me too, he said flatly. After you were dead and the debts were paid, she was going to kill me too. The detective thinks so, yes. Brandon laughed, a horrible broken sound. I killed my brother for money I stole. I tried to kill my parents for money I owed. And my wife was planning to kill me for insurance money. We deserve each other. We're all monsters. No, I said firmly. Brandon looked at me in surprise. Sarah is a monster. You're a weak, broken man who made terrible choices. There's a difference. Is there? I killed Michael, Mom. I pushed my own brother off a cliff because I was jealous and scared. That's monstrous. Yes, it is. But you also broke down tonight. You couldn't go through with killing us. You confessed everything. That doesn't erase what you did. But it means there's still something human left in you. Something worth saving. Brandon stared at me. How can you even look at me? How can you not hate me? Oh, I do hate you, I said, and watched him flinch. I hate what you did. I hate the choices you made. I hate that Michael died because of your jealousy and greed. But you're still my son. And part of me, a part I wish I could cut out but can't, still loves you. That's what makes this so unbearably painful. Kevin cleared his throat. Son, we're going to testify against you. You understand that, right? We're going to tell the court everything, about Michael, about the poisoning attempt, all of it. I know. I deserve it. I deserve whatever happens to me. We're also going to seek custody of Emma and Lucas. Brandon's eyes filled with fresh tears. Thank you, God. Thank you. They're innocent in all this. They deserve better than Sarah and me. Raise them right, Dad. Don't make the same mistakes with them that you made with me. What mistakes? Kevin asked, his voice hard. You saw me, Dad. You saw what I was and you covered it up. You enabled me. You taught me that I could get away with terrible things as long as I cried and apologized after. If you'd turned me in that night, if you'd made me face consequences for killing Michael, maybe I wouldn't be here now. Maybe I would have learned. Maybe I could have been better. The truth of those words hung in the air between us. Kevin's face went gray. You're right, Kevin said finally. I failed you. I failed Michael. I failed as a father, but I won't fail Emma and Lucas. They'll know the truth, age appropriately when they're old enough to understand. They'll learn that actions have consequences. They'll learn that love doesn't mean protecting people from the results of their choices. Tell them about Michael, Brandon said. Tell them they had an uncle who was kind and good and died because their father was jealous and weak. They need to know. They need to know so they can be better than me. I stood up. We will. And Brandon, I hope you find some peace in prison. I hope you use your time there to become the man you should have been. Not for us. For Michael's memory. As Kevin and I left the interrogation room, Brandon called out one last time. Mom? Dad? I really am sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am. I know, I said without turning around. But sorry doesn't bring back the dead. 3 months later, Kevin and I sat in the courtroom as Brandon and Sarah's trial began. Rebecca sat beside me, holding my hand. Emma and Lucas were in school, blissfully unaware that their parents' fates were being decided. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. The evidence was overwhelming. The notebook, the digitalis, the financial records, the recording from Kevin's watch, Brandon's full confession about Michael's murder. Sarah's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of Brandon's manipulation. They claimed she'd only gone along with the poisoning plan because she was afraid of Brandon, afraid of what he'd do if she refused. But when the prosecution played the recording of Sarah's voice, cold, calculated, talking about dosages and timelines, the jury's faces told the story. This was no terrified wife. This was a woman who'd planned every detail of a double murder. Brandon's lawyer took a different approach. He had Brandon take the stand and confess everything. Michael's death, the years of theft, the poisoning plan. Brandon cried through most of his testimony, but he never made excuses. I'm guilty, he said. Of all of it. I don't deserve mercy. I just want to make sure everyone knows that Sarah was the driving force behind the plan to kill my parents. I was weak and desperate, but she was the architect. And I was too stupid to realize she was planning to kill me too. When it was my turn to testify, I told the jury about Michael. about the sweet, kind boy who'd grown into a good man, about the night he died and the 25 years of lies that followed, about the dinner where my son and daughter-in-law tried to poison me. I don't know if my son can be redeemed, I said, but I know he's capable of remorse. Sarah, on the other hand, I looked directly at her. She stared back, her face blank, emotionless. Sarah feels nothing. She regrets getting caught, not what she did. That's the difference between them. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous. Brandon, guilty of second-degree murder for Michael's death. Guilty of attempted murder for the poisoning plan. Sentence, 35 years to life with possibility of parole. Sarah, guilty of first-degree attempted murder. The premeditation evident in her notebook made it first-degree rather than second. Sentence, life in prison without possibility of parole. As they led Sarah away, she finally showed emotion, rage. She screamed at the jury, at the judge, at Brandon. "This is your fault. You weak, pathetic excuse for a man. I should have poisoned you first." Brandon just hung his head and cried. It's Sunday evening, and Emma and Lucas are setting the table for dinner. It's been their chore for the past 6 months, since the judge granted us full custody and they moved into the house where their father grew up. "Grandma, can we use the fancy plates?" Emma asks. She's 9 now, taller, with braces and a confidence she didn't have a year ago. "Not tonight, sweetheart. Just the regular ones." Lucas comes running in from the backyard, dirt on his knees. "Grandpa says dinner's almost ready. He made spaghetti." Kevin appears in the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel, smiling. He looks older than he did a year ago. The stress of the trial and the custody battle took its toll. But he also looks lighter, like a weight has been lifted. No more secrets, no more lies. We gather around the oak table, the same table where Kevin and I used to eat with our sons, back when our family was whole. Emma tells us about her science project. Lucas demonstrates the new whistle he learned. Kevin and I exchange smiles across the table. After dinner, as we're clearing the dishes, Emma asks the question she's asked a dozen times before. "Grandma, will you tell us more about Uncle Michael tonight?" This is our new tradition. Every Sunday we share stories about Michael. We've shown Emma and Lucas photos, videos, things Michael built in Kevin's workshop. We've taken them to Miller's Gorge and placed flowers at the spot where he died. Age-appropriately, gradually, we're telling them the truth about their father, too. Uncle Michael loved building things, I begin, settling into my chair with both kids on either side of me. When he was 8 years old, he built a tree house in our backyard. It's still there. You've played in it. "The one with the rope ladder?" Lucas asks excitedly. "That's the one. He built it all by himself, with just a little help from Grandpa. He spent 3 weeks on it, measuring everything carefully, making sure every nail was in the right place." "Was he smart like Emma?" Lucas asks. Emma swats him. "I'm not that smart." "Yes, you are," I say firmly. "You're both smart, and kind, and brave, just like Michael was." "Do we look like him?" Emma asks. Kevin pulls out his phone and shows them a photo of Michael at 20 standing in front of the workshop, holding a chair he'd just finished. Then he holds up his phone next to Emma's face. "See? Same nose, same smile." Emma beams. "What happened to him, Grandma? You said you'd tell us when we were ready." I exchange a look with Kevin. We've talked about this moment, about when to tell them the full truth. Emma is 9, Lucas is 7. Are they ready? "Uncle Michael died in an accident," I say carefully. "But it wasn't really an accident. Someone hurt him. Someone who was jealous of him and made a very, very bad choice." "Who?" Lucas asks, his eyes wide. I take a deep breath. "Your father." The silence that follows is heavy. Emma's eyes fill with tears. "Daddy killed Uncle Michael?" "Yes, sweetheart. A long time ago, before you were born. He made a terrible mistake, and he's in prison now because of it." "Is that why we live with you now? Because Daddy and Mommy are bad people?" "Your father made bad choices," Kevin says gently. "And your mother made bad choices too. But you are not responsible for what they did. You are your own people. and you get to choose who you want to be. Lucas climbs into my lap, something he's been doing less as he gets older. Tonight, he needs the comfort. I want to be good like Uncle Michael, he says softly. Then you will be, I tell him, stroking his hair. You get to choose, Lucas. Every day, you get to choose to be kind, to be honest, to be good. That's the most important thing Grandma and Grandpa can teach you. Emma wipes her eyes. Can we visit Daddy? This is the hardest question. Brandon has asked to see the children, but we've been putting it off, waiting until they were ready. Do you want to? Kevin asks. Emma thinks for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe someday. But not yet. That's okay, I tell her. You don't have to see him until you're ready. And if you're never ready, that's okay too. That night, after the kids are in bed, Kevin and I sit on the porch like we've done for 40 years. The stars are out, bright and clear. Somewhere in a prison 3 hours away, Brandon is sitting in a cell, living with the consequences of his choices. Somewhere else, Sarah is doing the same, probably still blaming everyone but herself. But here, on this porch, with the sound of crickets and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog, there is peace. Do you think we're doing right by them? Kevin asks. Emma and Lucas? I think we're doing our best, I say. And this time we're not keeping secrets. We're not covering up the truth. We're teaching them that actions have consequences, that love doesn't mean enabling bad behavior, that they have the power to choose who they become. I wish Michael were here to see them. Me too. We sit in silence for a while, holding hands, watching the stars. Donna? Kevin says softly. Yes? Thank you for forgiving me, for what I did, for keeping that secret all those years. I squeeze his hand. I haven't fully forgiven you yet. I'm working on it, but I understand why you did it. And I know you've spent every day since trying to make it right. That's what love is, Kevin. Not perfection, just trying every day to be better than you were yesterday. I love you. I love you too. Inside the house, I hear Lucas call out from his room. Grandma, I can't sleep. I smile and stand up. Duty calls. As I head inside to read Lucas a story, I look back at Kevin on the porch. He's looking up at the stars, his face peaceful. We've been through hell and back. We've lost one son to murder and another to prison. We've been betrayed, lied to, nearly killed. But we survived. And more than that, we're building something new, something better, something honest. From the ashes of our broken family, we're creating a new one. With Emma and Lucas. With truth instead of secrets. With love that's been tested and proven stronger than poison, stronger than jealousy, stronger than greed. It's not the family I thought I'd have, but it's the family we need. And that, in the end, is enough.